Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I'm joined by Chris McAway, and we're here to talk about Aberdeen 1, Celtic Reserves 5. And the only downside of tonight, Chris, was something we actually called out. We actually called this out, didn't we, at half time?
We did.
Speaking about the fact that Aberdeen were fully hammer throwers, and Rio Atati there, you see him at the end of the game, hobbling round the trackside with a big ice pack on his knee. And you can also tell by the body language of Brendan Rodgers when he's gone up to Jimmy Tillene, unhappy, in fact, raging. And I hope Rodgers calls that out in the post-match press conference.
Yeah, I had a bit of fear when we brought on some of our first-team regulars, or the guys you'd expect to play in a cup final, and Hatate would definitely be one of them. And I thought, God, with the kind of challenges we'd seen up to that point, you're worried that they'd go in hard on one of our players. You hoped it wouldn't happen. And to be honest, at that point we were strolling the game. There was, the game's done as as competition. They're down to 10 men. We're walking at, I think it was only a matter of time before we got another goal. And the boy came away saying it was a 50-50 challenge, but you don't go in with that kind of intensity in a 50-50. And he does it right in front of the dugout. Rodgers is quite rightly incensed by it. And I knew immediately, in fact I said it in the group chat, I said this doesn't look good for Hatate, because he's not a player that typically stays down. He's not one of these guys who does the stereotypical rolling all over the ground. The fact he was down in continual pain and stayed down for a number of minutes, I thought he's really taken us on. I hoped it had just been maybe a dead leg, but it could be something as bad as the ligaments getting tweaked or strained. I think the lucky thing is that he had his leg off the ground when it happened, because if that had got caught in the turf, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But it was always going to be a risk tonight, particularly when we brought on those first team players. Aberdeen, look, they've got it in their game. I'm not going to have a go at them for it. I know they are a physical team. They can leave a footprint on you, but I thought that challenge was needless. I thought it was reckless, and it should have been at least a second yellow.
I know we're leading with this. It was a great result, brilliant performance. A lot of guys coming in there from the fringes, Chris, and performing really well.
Oh, yeah, really, really well. Yeah.
But I just think that the level of frustration is, the reason why I'm leading with it. And we will get to each individual goal and all the good performances from Celtic. Sean Stewart, Aberdeen are a dirty team. Their aim was to injure one of our players. I think the only game against Aberdeen I haven't covered this season was the semi-final, where you hosted that for us, Chris, and we destroyed them at Hampden 6-0. But every time we've played them, I have called them out for being a dirty team. Shinnie is one of the worst culprits, actually, but he never had time to hack anybody because Forrest was running rings round them.
I had one toast, yeah.
But Aberdeen went out to hurt a player tonight, and I don't mind even saying it. They've gone out there, and you watch Brendan Rodgers when he's gone to Jimmy Tillene after the game to shake his hand. He's not happy. He's absolutely raging, incensed that Rio Atati potentially is out of the cup final. We've already lost Jota to a really nasty injury, albeit, it was one of the innocuous things that happened with Jota. This was nasty. And I think that there's an there's a deliberate nature to it when you watch it back. There really is. I mean, we can sit here all day long and say that doesn't happen. Of course it does. It does happen in professional football. And I am really, really angry to watch that. Some people saying, why was he on the park in the first place? We'll run through your comments. We're going to be talking about some of the high points as well, but it's just so disappointing on a night like tonight. Their fans were in full voice, absolutely tremendous. James A. Forrest was getting the Jimmy Johnston treatment. James A. Forrest. You hear it? Oh, beautiful.
That was superb.
Absolutely beautiful. And, he did everything except score a goal tonight.
He really did.
He was brilliant.
Man of the match for me.
I don't sing on the show, but for Jamesy, I'll get the old the mic out and I'll give him a wee tune. Maybe Tony Ralston as well. But no, it was tremendous. Other than that one moment, Chris, so disappointing.
Yeah, it's like I said, we don't want to dwell on the injury, and we want to find out.
He's telling me to shut up. I'll be getting accused of being on the baby tonight.
Hopefully, when we find out about it, hopefully it's not as bad as what it looked, but it certainly looked a bit nasty, and you do worry about what effect that'll have on the, his ability to play in the cup final. But listen, the one thing that really came across in the match tonight is that even with what you'd consider some of your fringe players or players on the periphery, we are a better footballing team than Aberdeen, and if we carry that kind of performance into the cup final, I think we'll absolutely tear them apart. I really do. I wasn't impressed with Aberdeen tonight. We've praised Aberdeen at different times this season for their performance, particularly their early going, but tonight we were different class tonight. And I have to say the boys that came in, even the ones who we give a bit of criticism to at half time, like Johnny Kenny, he answered that criticism in the best possible way. Brilliant, proper strikers, headed goal, really, really good. And he looked lively throughout. And I think, he's maybe a player that just needs a run of games to get that real sharpness. Because I felt in the first half his position just wasn't where it needed to be, but it certainly was there in the second half, and that was brilliant to see. Yang came in lively, got his goal. I managed to watch the goal during the second half there, so I managed to see it, and it's a good kind of poacher's instinctive finish. So brilliant. He was involved throughout, putting some good crosses. McCowan, I thought, came in. What a brilliant cross for the goal, and he took a few hard knocks tonight as well. He was certainly on the end of some rough treatment.
Yeah.
But he's just got that kind of, a little bit like Tony Ralston. He's got that kind of very gritty mentality. He just kind of gets up, dusts himself off, and gets on with it. And I thought he had a good game tonight. Bernardo, a little bit of an understated performance, but he kind of grew into the game tonight, and it was good to see him getting some minutes. And again, I think he's one of these players you trust coming in and coming off the bench. And again, I think he's a player that's just going to continually improve. But you've mentioned them already, and I have to say, Jamesy Forrest. I mean, what was it? At least 2 assists tonight. I thought he was involved in the bulk of our good play. He was tearing Shinnie apart down that wing. And he doesn't even have the pace that he used to have, but he's just got that guile and that ability on the ball, and the footballing intelligence now, I think, at this stage of his career is excellent. I thought his distribution was good tonight. I thought he played incredibly unselfishly, because he's obviously desperate to score, but he was still, even when he was getting out of positions, he was still making the decision to try and pass and assist his teammates, which is, I think, is a sign of a real good pro when he's doing that. He understands the basics of his role. And Ida was threatening all night, but pops up with another goal. Nearly had a cracking volley. I mean, what tremendous skill for that volley that was saved. I don't know if it was eventually flagged for offside, but that would have been a contender for goal of the season had it gone in. But he looked hungry when he came on, and his persistence paid off, and he got a goal. So, yeah, great performance tonight to a man. I think the only one I would probably say didn't really cover himself in glory was Jeff Schlupp. And that carried into the early part of the second half anyway, where he was too easily brushed off a couple of challenges. Kind of grew into the second half, but he's not really changed my opinion of him based on tonight's game.
Right, here's the difference, right? You've got Jeffrey Schlupp, who in the first half has to do better at the goal. Yes, I know that Ralston is partly culpable for it. Schlupp has to do better. He has to be stronger. And you've got that compared to the way they were going through our players. And you think to yourself, Chris, there's one player there trying to protect himself, and the others are trying to put us out of a cup final. And that's the only way. Listen, people might think I'm being cynical, because after that, you're emotionally charged, you're disappointed, but you're also angry that a player like Rio Atati, who all week we've been going on about him just hitting that peak form, Chris, and then we're talking about the future. Is Rio Atati going to be at the football club next season? And you're looking forward to that cup final. I cannot wait to tune into Brendan Rodgers post-match, because we have spoken about Brendan Rodgers and Cine Salo recently about calling this type of thing out, the missiles on the park, and also the bad refereeing decisions. It's been called out, and I hope it gets called out tonight as well. Jungle Line, relentless, absolutely. And user relentless as well. Brilliant comments coming through. We're going to bring as many of your comments into the chat as we possibly can, as well as looking through some of the good performances this evening. Doogie Lynch, you're in. Big Mike is the rock. Well, we're going to have to talk about Maik Nawrocki. We were chatting about Mike earlier on today, and I think he could feel a bit hard done by in relation to his lack of minutes. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know if he's a good trainer. We don't know about his temperament. None of that. All we can kind of base this on is the minutes that we see him on the park. And yeah, I think there are certain limitations to his game, Chris. But seeing a night like tonight, where you just want somebody to sweep up, which he's done very, very well, to block, he did. You also seen that against Rangers, how often he had to sweep up because we were making too many errors at the back. He did that very well tonight. He was very, very hard on the tackle, and I think that probably ended Nisbet's night that tackle that he made against Nisbet in the first half. And of course, he opens the scoring with a goal. And he probably would have got a second. I'm going to pick this up on Ida. He probably would have got a second if Ida hadn't shoved him out the road. And also, no prisoners with a big man, by the way. He was wanting that 20th goal because McArdle had a chance at a shot and he almost got
pushed out of the way.
Shoved out the road as well.
I felt for the lads, but I think he'd have pulled rank on him on that one. It was like, in my way, that's his mind.
I like that. He's hungry. I'm not going to say greedy. He's hungry for goals. But Nawrocki, he's one of these guys that will probably leave one way or another in the summer. It'll probably be on loan. But I don't think he's let himself down tonight, or indeed at any point in the season.
No, I can't fault really what we're seeing on the park, and that's the frustration because, while he's not often doing anything outstanding, he's just tidy. He just kind of does his job, gets on with it. There's no fuss, no frills, and I quite like that. I like just a defender whose first priority is to defend. Right? I know it's all about being able to carry the ball and feed the attack these days, and I get the importance of that. But fundamentally, I want my defenders to be able to defend, and I think Maik Nawrocki, that's something he can certainly do. But at the same time, you're right, there's a lot of stuff we don't see behind the scenes. We don't see how the manager rates him in training. And I think while the manager's producing, winning results, football, we're winning football matches, we're getting results, we're winning titles, I tend to think I'm going to trust the manager's judgment. And if the manager just says, look, might go on and do it for the 90 minutes or the 70 minutes, however long he gets, but he's not giving me the confidence in training that I can pick him up, I can pick him each and every time, then I'm going to kind of side with the manager until I've got reason not to. I think it's different if you're continually losing games, you're leaking goals, and you're thinking, well, our defenders are not playing well, why not give this boy a chance? And if he's still not getting in the team, then you're starting to question, what's the manager seeing that we are not? But when we are winning games and picking up the results that we are, I just think we've got to take the manager's judgment on this one, and it's a pity because I reckon, as you said, he's a player who could go to another league, another team, and he'd probably be in the first team straight away.
I think so, and you kind of look at his future and think that if there's going to be a permanent move, it will be preceded by a 1-year loan deal. So he might go back to Poland for a year because of this lack of game time, but. Certainly, he does have a bit of steel about him, as Simon Fideni says. How is Denny on this particular evening? Spent a wee bit of time in Denny myself, actually. So thanks for tuning in, Simon. And who else is coming into the chat? David Boyle is on the YouTube. I really enjoyed that. Delighted for Kenny.
Same.
McCowan was bright, and McArdle looks tasty.
I hope we get a chance to talk about him. I like this kid, I have to say.
Kev McCluskey might say delicious. I think with McArdle, we spoke yesterday about the amount of players who have had 1 or 2 appearances, the teenagers that have come in this season, guys like Jude Bonner and Francis Turley, etc. Daniel Cummins was not going to get another appearance because he's away. He's on his way out. He's signed that pre-contract. But McArdle makes his debut at the weekend and he comes on tonight. What I like about him is that he's obviously very, very lean. He's a skinny young lad. He's 17 years of age. But he seems to have that ability to take the ball, and he's always aware. He's heads up, He's heads up and he's looking for a pass. Doesn't mind a bit of a tackle. We've seen a bit of that during the weekend's game as well. And he tried a shot tonight. I would have loved to have seen it gone in as well. But
yeah, so would I. Yeah, I was nearly off my seat.
Do you chuck him in for a start? I mean, listen, it used to be normalised with a 17-year-old. You think of guys like. I think Peter Grant had just turned 18, but Paul McStay, 17 years of age, Kieran Tierney, Tony Ralston, Jamesy Forrest, these guys come into the side. Roy Aitken was 16. They come into the side at a young age, and you've got to throw them in at some point just to see if they can handle it. And he's had 2 substitute appearances. We are undoubtedly going to have an injury to Rio Atati, so there is a space there. We know that Engels didn't feature tonight. I think McCowan played really, really well. He's maybe needing rested after the kicks he took. Give McArdle a start? Is that a wee bit too much? Too soon? Too much too soon?
I think if we had a few more matches, then I would say absolutely. I'd throw him in, because for a 17-year-old, it looks very assured on that park. He didn't shy away from anything. I like the fact that he's got a bit of, seems to be quite good vision on him. I like the fact that he was trying to play these kind of penetrative passes, which are really like a midfielder to do. And you think for 17-year-olds, only his second appearance coming off the bench, having the confidence to go and do that, he's clearly got a real degree of confidence in his own ability, and I like that. The only reason I wouldn't throw him in for the start of the next game is I think your next game is your dress rehearsal for the cup final. I think that's where you get the momentum into the players and get a real high confidence. I'm hoping for a real statement win before the cup final, so that we carry the maximum amount of momentum in there we can. So that, for me, would be the only thing that would go against them. But see, if we had 2 or 3 more matches, I'd have no fear about putting that kid in, because I like him. He looks tidy. It reminds, I don't know, every time I watch him, it reminds me of Big Morton Vikhorst. He's got that kind of look about him. You know, he looks too tall to be that number
Straight
one.
back.
But he is, yeah.
But tall, but very silky. Absolutely.
Quite a silky looking footballer. Yeah, I'm really interested to see where his career goes. And I tell you what, I'll be so disappointed if we don't see or hear from him again, over the course of the next season, because I'm hoping that he's getting these appearances because Brendan's seen something in him, and he's now got the chance to go and develop himself alongside the first team. He looks frankly too good for the B team.
I also think that we are really needing an example to be set.
Yes.
We need a player to come through where Brendan can say, look what this individual has done. And I thought we were there with Daniel Kelly. I thought that Brendan Rodgers fancied Daniel Kelly. Rocco Vat was in and around Ange Postecoglou's team. Then he was, similarly, he was in and around Brendan's team. Didn't break through, didn't, get the game time that at that age I think you need to develop. So there's been a few false dawns in the last few seasons. And I think that you need someone to point to for the rest of the academy guys and say, look at how he's approached this and look at the rewards that he's getting as well. So I'd love to see McArdle getting game time. Times have changed. There was an era where a 17-year-old going into the first team wasn't an issue. It's more of an issue now because we've not seen it that often. Joe O'Donnell comes in to say that Papa Guy must have a free pass. He was on a booking. And by the way, if we want to be ultra critical of the ref, Kuhn was taken out right on the touchline.
It was, yeah.
A couple of minutes before it. And he didn't even get a free kick, Chris. In fact, there was a free kick given probably 90 seconds later for something that was probably not even a foul. It was almost as if the ref had realised his error and then given us a free kick for something else. Martin Nicol, Kenny, awesome goal. Hey, listen, put the hands up. We were pretty critical. He was quite quiet in the first half. No critical to the point where we were writing him off as a footballer, but he didn't do much in the first half. Did you see Liam Scales' reaction?
I didn't know. I saw him on the bench, but I never saw his reaction.
I think he was the happiest guy at Pittodrie.
Oh, brilliant.
That Johnny Kenny had scored tonight, and everybody was cuddling Liam Scales as well. Donny Tiny Hands, Dirty Aberdeen. Yeah, we've called them out all season. They are the hammer throwers of this division. There is no doubt about that, and I think a lot of people share that thought as well. RL77, is that Robbie Coltrane in your avatar? I think it is. Hammers were thrown all game. I've been watching Robbie recently, but after my interview with Peter Braun, because he was involved in the script editing of Tutti Frutti, which was a wee favourite back in the 1980s featuring Robbie. And I wasn't sure if Robbie Coltrane was a Celtic fan, because there was two things that led me to believe that he was, because his character in Cracker was.
Because there's a famous one where he's arguing with a Liverpool fan, isn't he? And he's just shouting Celtic, while the other boy's singing a Liverpool song. Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. And that other boy is Robert Carlyle.
Yep.
So he's shouting
LIV. Always ends up playing a Scouser for some reason.
And he played it well. And Coltrane, like throughout Cracker, that was the memorable scene. But there was another scene where he's on the floor, and I think the wife says to him, I've got a bad back or something, and he goes, well, it's all right, Celtic have got 4. And at that time, in the early 90s, he was right. And then, of course, he turns up at Celtic Park for Mike Galloway's benefit game, and he's in the stand. So I asked Peter Braun, who obviously knew him, if he was a Celtic fan. He says he had no interest in football whatsoever. I was going to put him on the list of celebrity Celts. Brendan McCarthy, some of our players out for the final. Yeah. And, we knew about Jota. We were prepared for that, right? But Rio, just hitting peak form. Again, let us know if anybody has been watching the action and has seen Brendan Rodgers' reaction to that. I'm just going to have a look at some of the most recent comments just to see what was Brendan Rodgers saying in relation to that. Rodgers is on Sky now. Let us know. Paul O'Neill reckons he was a Rangers fan. Well, Peter Braun said he wasn't interested in football. He was more interested in trains and engines and all that kind of stuff. One of the opening scenes, in the opening scene, when Big Jazza is getting buried in Tutti Frutti, which is obviously Robbie Coltrane's brother in the show, they're in a cemetery that overlooks the old Celtic Park as well. So Parkhead gets noticed if you're of my vintage. Now, Pete comes in to say, why bring on Hatate? It's madness to bring him on as Aberdeen put the boot in. Yeah, I know. I get it. But, it's maybe part of the plan as well in terms of minutes and legs, Chris. So I don't want to be overcritical of that decision.
No,
that Brendan made.
I mean, you're not expecting your players to get to be on the end of that treatment. I would say, having seen some of the treatment that McCowan in particular was getting in that game, that there was always going to be a risk of bringing on Hatate. And Hatate isn't a player who, he stays on the periphery of the game. He plays in the heart of the park, and he's in and around those central areas, and takes the ball wide, etc. So he's not someone that's not going to be involved in a game. So he's always going to be subject to a bit of close attention, as it were. I just thought it was the intensity of the challenge, right? Even if it could be classified as a 50-50, the intensity that they both came together was not 50-50. It was like 90-10 in favour of the Aberdeen player, and he really clattered into Hatate, and potentially the injury might just be how he's caught him, but you're always going to risk injuring a player when you go in like that. And there was no way. I don't think there was any intention to win the ball there. It was just a case of I'm getting here and you're not. So it's a frustrating one. It's a frustrating one. Nobody was more frustrated than the manager and the player, but I don't like to see it. Like I say, I'm not going to labour the point that Aberdeen are dirty. I just think Aberdeen are a team that do what they have to do to win. I've got nothing against that, but it is frustrating when you've got a cup final. There's a bit of dark arts being applied there.
I think they're dirty. I'm going to just go down and say it, and I think they went out to hurt our players.
I'm just trying to be diplomatic.
No, I know, but that's fair enough. I honestly do. I've been saying it all season, Chris, and I just think on today of all days, it's like margins, right? So we'll take out one of your creative players. Who do we think then steps in for Rio? Because Callum McGregor, I mean, I wrote it down here, 60 minutes in, and he makes a 50-yard run to cover because we've lost possession, right? And he's the guy, he doesn't get involved in the play, but he's the guy that then obviously overloads our defence and Aberdeen's move breaks down. And I'm glad to see that he was actually taken off at that point. So he's a starter for the cup final. Of course he is. Engels is a starter. And Brendan Rodgers' favourite trio would include Rio Hatate. So who replaces Rio? Because you're looking at what did Bernardo do when he came on? He kind of filled the McGregor role when McGregor went off. So he was playing, he was playing in the six. I thought McCowan was excellent tonight. I really do. And I think over the piece, in terms of an introductory season, he's done really well. But he's not really had many starts. So the question is Bernardo or McCowan. Should Rio not make it? And it doesn't look like he's going to.
Yeah, I think my vote would probably go for McCowan for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's a more naturally attacking player than Bernardo. I think he's got slightly more of that kind of directness about him than Bernardo does, whereas I think Bernardo's more of a kind of measured player. He's a little bit more in the, as you say, the deeper kind of, spread the play, control the play type of player, whereas McCowan's a bit more all action. I don't think he's as polished a player as Bernardo. I think Bernardo has got really good distribution with his feet. I think he reads a game well. I think he's got the ability to help manage a game. But when you consider the way Aberdeen played against us tonight and some of the rough treatment, and McCowan was on the end of a fair share of it, I think you maybe need someone that's got that hardness, that's got that grit and that determination that McCowan has. So I think it'd be very, very close. Now, I would have no issues if Bernardo came in because I'm a huge fan of his, but I would probably start with McCowan because I think it could be a bit of an all-action start at Hampden, and I think you need a player with his kind of energy levels. And as we saw tonight, not only can he score, but he can create. That cross for Kenny's goal was sublime, and we know he can play out in the wing. So I think he's got a little bit more to his game in a creative attacking sense than Bernardo. But that's it's very much 60-40. If Bernardo came in, I'd be more than happy.
I agree with the reasons that you said there with regards to the creativity and the offensive elements. But I think what I would do is I would play Bernardo as the 6. I would put Callum McGregor on the kind of left,
yeah,
the Hatate role, and then on the right-hand side. I
that's a
don't mean
decent
a number 10. I mean more of a sitting on the left-hand side with Engel sitting on the right-hand side and trying to create that kind of trio on both sides of the park. Because I think McGregor, obviously on the left, he's very, very comfortable. But, just offensively, I don't have an issue with that. And I know that at the beginning of the season, every season, we talk about his legs. So he's not got the legs to be an offensive midfield player. Well, he's having one of the most prolific seasons of his career this season. So I would play him further wide. I'd play Engels on the other side, and I'd put Bernardo right in there as the number 6.
A decent shout. It's a good problem for the manager to have. I'd have to say it is.
It is. I'm just going to see if anybody's given us an update in relation to Rodgers and what he has said after the game. I'm pretty sure he'll call out the Aberdeen treatment and the fact that the ref didn't act on it either. Terence Pat, welcome back. You're on the YouTube. Is Maeda in Japan? Liam was telling us that how wherever you're working, that's where you give birth, basically. And that is, believe it or not, why I'm a Fifer. However, in Japan, it's different. So you need to go home to have your kids. So obviously, Mrs. Maeda is over there. And Dyson, I assume or presume, will also be over there for the birth of their child as well. Ian Roy, you're right. I do need to get out a wee bit more. Yes, I do spend far too much time watching stuff, reading about things, etc. And some have called me an anorak. Estepona boy, I can't deny it. Estepona boy, the reason I bring this up is because, George Conley would walk into today's team. And you know what? He would walk into any team. I have spoken to a number of Lisbon Lions, and I've asked about, this wave of players that came after them, the Quality Street kids, obviously doing the research on that book. And one of the questions generically that I would ask is, would any of them get into the Lisbon Lions team? And I know it doesn't work like that. I know that the team is far more important than all the individuals. I get it. There's players in there who weren't the best, let's say, right back that Celtic have ever had. Danny McGrain's a better right back than Jim Craig, but the team was right and we got it right, and I wouldn't make any difference, any change.
Yeah.
But quite a few of the Lions says to me, George Conley would get a game for that team. They did. And now, I don't know where they would play him because Bobby Murdoch and Bertie Auld were no slouches. But George Conley was a phenomenal player, an absolute legend. AJ, SC Tech, either goal means we have 3 players in the 20s for goals.
That's right. Yeah, I heard that during the match. And Chris
yeah. Can you remember the last time we did it, who the 3 players were?
There was a joke on commentary that we made Larsson, Hartson and Sutton. I think Sutton joked that Larsson let them down, which clearly was. So I think one of the 3 didn't do it there. I would say 3 players in 20.
Rob's right. Dalglish was one of them.
Oh,
you're going
right
back. You're going way back.
You're going right back then. Who did Dalglish play alongside? Bloody hell.
I'll put you at your misery. It's
I do it, yeah.
Ronnie Glavin.
Oh, jeez.
We've got a Ronnie Glavin that comments on here. I don't know if it's the same guy. He went down
we keep seeing that. Yeah, we keep wondering if it's the same one.
He went down to Barnsley and became a legend in there. And I think the 3rd player was Harry Hood. So the last time we had 3 players with 20 or more goals, it was way back when.
Used to frequent his pub. So
did you?
Yeah.
Which one?
Angels up in
Angels. Yeah, absolutely right. Eddie Quigley, how many clear fouls did the ref let them away with? It's getting ridiculous. Yeah, I agree with that. We called him out at halftime as well. And Paddy Lavery says more seagulls than Aberdeen fans.
So that
there were by the end of the game. How good? Let's have a wee bit of this. How good was young McCardle? He was brilliant. For a cameo appearance, he was absolutely excellent. I mean, players can come on and more or less be passengers for 10 or 15 minutes, and it's difficult for them to get into a game. I just felt he seemed to get involved. He was demanding the ball, which I love a young player to do.
Yeah, as he looks for it, yeah.
And at 17, you think to yourself, well, I think he's played 41 games in the Lowland League and in the UEFA Pro League. So it's at that point you think to yourself, well, I know it's not quite senior football, but it's competitive at his age group. It's not just playing under 18s, if you know what I mean, playing in the Lowland League. So yeah, I'm glad he took the step up, and maybe a loan for a season. He might be one of the guys that goes out to Admira Wacker, for example, next season and gets another 40 games under his belt. Ian Roy, you're back in. Love McArdle, got to keep him too. The future is looking good. That was a leg breaker, says Paul Maguire. Yeah, absolutely. Could have done.
I think if his foot had been planted, I think if his foot had been planted, I think it could have been. It was the real, just the force that he was hit. And I think, as I say, the saving grace might be that he was pulling at the challenge at the time.
It was a horrible challenge. My ball says hatcheted Hatate. You're just testing me now. And Wee McArdle looks a player. Jazz CFC. Sean the Mac. The Hatate challenge was cynical, to say the least. Yeah. And James Devine comes in to say Aberdeen are a bunch of hammer-throwing bams. That's what I was saying, James. Chris disagreed with me. He was being far too nice. They are. Yeah. Hammer throwers. Absolute hammer throwers. So I think the look at tonight's game, it's 5-1. And if it hadn't been for that challenge, we're absolutely delighted that we've put out an understrength team, 8 changes, Chris, and virtually every player, I think, put a good account of themselves over. If you said that anyone was giving the gaffer a dilemma, who would it be? Is Yang that man? Is Forrest, when you see the way that he tore up Shinnie, is he the man?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the thing is, I think Forrest doesn't give the manager a dilemma because the manager knows all about Forrest, right? And I think he knows he can trust him if he throws him in. The one I would say, funnily enough, that's probably given the manager a dilemma might be Tony Ralston. I know we saw AJ coming back tonight, but I think Tony has done excellent since he's come in. And if there's any doubts on AJ's fitness, I'd have no problems putting Tony in. I really wouldn't. I think he's a steady hand. I think he shows that he can actually support the attacking play. We know he's got a brilliant assist in him every so often. We saw it last week. Put in a good cross again tonight. And I think he's dependable enough in a game like the Scottish Cup final that should we need him and should we put him in, he'd be in there. I mean, if AJ, I think, gets to full fitness, if he maybe plays at the weekend, then I would say AJ would probably get the nod. But, food for thought for the manager, and maybe rewards Ralston's performance. The other one you could say, Sinisalo again didn't do anything to disgrace himself tonight. I thought he looked comfortable, looked assured, actually quite good on the ball on a couple of occasions as well. He was put under pressure and he didn't panic, reacted well, and I thought he was solid. So yeah, those two I would say are the ones that would potentially give the manager a dilemma. Outside of Rio, the forced change for Rio, if that happens, then yeah, he's got options.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that is the two players who have played themselves out of the reckoning for the cup final, should everybody else be fit, would be Jeffrey Schlupp and Austin Trusty. I think they two guys should have no complaints if they're not selected for the starting 11. If CCV and Greg Taylor are fully fit, obviously. I don't think those two play, Chris.
I think at the moment I would say Scales is just ahead of Trusty. I think Trusty's maybe suffering for the fact that he's been in and out of the team recently. I don't think he had a terrible game tonight. I actually thought it was okay as the game went on. But
he took a sore one as well. Actually.
He was on the. I was going to say he was on the end of a bit of rough treatment as well. But I thought he got more comfortable and more assured as the game went on. I think the only issue I've got with Trusty is I feel as though he sometimes doesn't read the flight of the ball very well and gets caught out. And he's a bit slow to react sometimes, and I'd almost rather he played it a wee bit simpler. If the ball's coming over and he's not sure he's going to get to it, just do what Stephen McManus used to do and just get it out, safety first, and give yourself a chance to regroup. So I do feel that the Scales Carter Vickers partnership just looks a bit more secure for me than the CCV Trusty partnership at the moment.
One final word that's coming in from My Ball on the YouTube, and he says the fans were fantastic tonight. You imagine, fabulous rather. You imagine after that game, and obviously the travel from Aberdeen to get home, absolute commitment. The Jamesy Forrest song was worth its weight in gold. And what did we get in response? We got a song with the following lyrics. They rake in the bucket for something to eat. They find a dead rat and they think it's a treat. Honestly, that's what we got from Aberdeen, and you think to yourself, Stephen, your song. So thanks everybody for getting involved. It's always an absolute pleasure. We do have gigs coming up, and one that I want to tell you about is two guys who were involved in Celtic stopping the mythical 10. Here they are here. I'm just going to bring that up in its entirety, and the ticket link is underneath the video. It's Alan Stubbs, Big Stubbsy, who's been through a lot, and obviously also beat Rangers as the Hibs manager in the Scottish Cup final. And it's Tosh McKinlay, who I've got to say is like a stand-up comic once he gets that mic. So really looking forward to this one. ticket link is underneath, and it's the night of the Champions League final. So we are going to have the game screened, and we're going to do a Q&A in and around that. And at halftime, we'll get a wee bit of a kind of analysis, if you like, from Stubbsy and Tosh McKinley on the game on the night as well. It really does promise to be a tremendous evening. I'll be there, of course. I'll be the guy asking the questions, and you can be there as well, just by clicking on the link underneath this video. All that's left for me to say once again, Chris McIlwain, Double Denim, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Pleasure.